I'm Julie Shulo, CEO of Association Analytics. We've been around since 1999, and our sole focus is on the association market, so working with both professional and trade associations and nonprofits, really figuring out how to best leverage data and to drive revenue, save on resources, operational cost, etc. And more we're seeing folks have a plethora of data sources that they're looking at, and how do you bring that together? Where do you start? And how do you get the answers to the questions that you may not even know you have? And so with that, we've developed a product acumen that solves this. Not going to focus a lot on that today. We're going to focus on what you can do and start right away at your association yourselves. Part of that is data governance and having an analytic strategy, and maybe even getting into some predictive analytics depending on where you are in your data journey. And we're based in Arlington, Virginia. So these are some of the folks that we work with. Of course, Imus being one of the integrations that we have, but working just in the association space, it's been part of our main strategy to partner with all of the source systems in order to easily suck data into a central repository and deliver it to the association space. So as you start to think about analytics, these might be some of the areas that you want to focus. So predictive analytics, that might be further down the line, or you might have a question today around member retention or meeting attendance that could be answered through predictive analytics. Most people start with membership. And so if you're looking for a starting point, you typically look at what are your revenue sources, where, or pain points, but membership is usually at the top of that list. Some others, finance, sales and orders, of course, member scoring and member engagement, which we'll show you some examples of today, exhibits, sponsorships, advertising. So hopefully everybody here can resonate with at least a couple of these. And, when you're thinking about the 360 view, it's really a combination of all of these different factors put together. So here, if you're looking at a data and analytics journey, this might be some of the different areas you might be looking at. So data governance, a lot of people, and we will touch on this a little bit, it could be a dry topic, but really important and a foundational piece when you're doing any sort of analytics project. And what's typically missing in all of this is some sort of central repository. How are you bringing all of this data together in order to start to make decisions that are going to impact your association? A good starting point too is an analytic strategy roadmap. And this could be as simple as getting together a cross-functional team at your association and sit down and start to meet weekly and talk about it. What are we trying to accomplish as an association? And then take an inventory of what data sources do you have, and then start mapping those together. How are we going to answer those questions using data? And that could be a great starting point. We've seen many people in the association space start here. And then you just map it out. What is your future state? What is your current state? And what are those steps that you're going to take to get there? KPI and engagement workshopping. Again, if you're going through a strategic planning exercise or even a departmental exercise where you're looking at, okay, what are our goals? You work in the meetings department, we want to get X amount of attendees. How are you going to get there? And then mapping what data that you have and what questions you're trying to answer. It could be as simple as that as a starting point. So we're going to cover a lot today and kind of speak broadly and hone in on a couple of specific examples. But if there is an area that you're more interested in, as Meg said, throw something over into the question log and we'll get there. And we could even have a potential future webinar talking about one of the specific topics and dive deeper into one of them. I could talk about analytics all day, every day. So happy to go in whatever direction from here as you want. So this was Google's chief economist. And he said the ability to understand and communicate about data will be the single most important skill in the next decade. So really think about that. It's not the technical skills that we might have seen previously. It's really how are you able to look at data and communicate how you're going to use that data in your business. And that's likely what all of you showed up here today to try to start to bridge those gaps or to hone in on some skills to help you do that. So here, you may have seen this before, this could be applied to many different things, but the trajectory of the growth rate is the red line going across, and that's what we expect. So we expect things to happen at a certain rate, but the reality is they happen much faster. And everything in between there is really opportunity and risk. I like to look at it as opportunity because I'm an optimist. And a way that you can really leverage and start to take advantage of this is by using data to make decisions. More and more in our roles at any level, we're required to make decisions more quickly. And the best way that you can do that, feeling a little bit of confidence, my friend over at ASA, Reggie Henry, he likes to call it data confidence. So you can use a little bit of data to at least guide you in the right direction to make those decisions. So this is a rhetorical question since you guys are all on mute. How are you making decisions today? A lot of people are using some forms of data. A lot of people are making decisions because that's the way it was done last year. And so it's hard to kind of break out of that. A lot of it's because of instincts, politics, those type of things. And so part of building a data culture is breaking this mold and really relying on data to make those decisions. So the very simple question, what is analytics? This could be answered in many different ways, but we like to say that it's data-guided decision-making that leads to action. And so that's often missing. We build visualizations and people come up with great ideas that tells you a lot and gives you a lot of insight, but then how are you, it's the so what factor. What are you going to do about it? And we have a couple of great examples to share with you today about what people did about what they were seeing out of their data. So asking better questions, and this is something that's building a data culture. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. And so part of your data strategy should be figuring out what are those questions you want to answer, and some of them you might not know. And so are you putting together something that you could easily ask questions of to dive deeper into the questions you're trying to solve for? So Megs, I think you touched a little bit about this, but your data universe. So you have your AMS, Imus, you may have fundraising, you may have email marketing automation, you may have a community like Higher Logic, you may have, or you I'm sure do have a finance system, an events system. And so more and more, all of these different systems have analytical tools, but they're still siloed. So you're still looking at only the information that's put into here and only the data that's put into here. So you need to start thinking about a central repository. And you could very simply use Excel as a starting point, as a central repository. You know, you don't have to shoot for the moon. Start with something that you maybe already have. And we'll show some visualizations today. Some of them in Acumen, which is our product, but you could use, some of them are in Power BI, Microsoft Power BI. You may even have that already if you're an Outlook customer. So start with what you have. Some of you may have Tableau. You could start to imagine some of these visualizations and such in Tableau. And if not Excel, start there. Start to use the functionality there as a central repository. So these are some of the pain points that we typically hear and hopefully resonate with you. It takes days or at least hours to manually prepare reports. Often they're being done by an individual, so you have the room for error there. There might be incomplete understanding of member preferences or interests. We're doing a lot of guessing. Can't answer new questions quickly. You may get a question from your board or an executive or even a member where you can't quickly access that information and serve it up to them. It might take, again, going back to the first point, might take a bunch of time to prepare those reports to get the answers. Wondering which programs to sunset. This is often a problem or an issue or a challenge within associations, we have a bunch of different programs and we can't really see the profitability of those programs to figure out what we could sunset so we can redirect our resources to where we are being profitable. Which content is most relevant? And so, you know, what are people talking about? What content should we be serving up to our members? What do they care about most? A lot of this, again, is guessing. And so how can we hone in and what can we use the data that we have in order to do this more effectively? Along with that is sending too many emails. That's often something we hear a lot of. We're sending too many emails. They're not targeted. It's not segmented. You know, how do we use data in order to do this more efficiently and effectively? New sources of revenue. So figuring out, again, repointing resources and using data to do that, and identifying new target audiences. So those are usually the 5 or 6 key points that we hear from associations that they're trying to solve for. So what your data journey might look like is, at the bottom here, we have data governance. Again, we're going to touch on this, but it could be a bit of a dry topic. However, we've done 3-hour presentations just on data governance, so happy to answer any questions on this topic as well. But this is really getting your house in order and figuring out that doesn't mean that you need to do a huge data quality cleanup project. It means you need to figure out what data you have, how you're using that data, because the data quality might be only at a 30%, but that might be okay because of how you're using it. And I think the point here is don't let data quality be a hindrance to pushing you ahead in your data journey. That's something that's almost a false assumption that we see a lot of times, like, oh, we can't do anything with data and analytics because we really need to clean up all of our data. That may be the case, but there is usually somewhere that you can start in what you already have. And the next step to that is then putting together some sort of dashboard. So answering questions that you know that you have in an easy way. So how many members do I have? And then breaking it down by member type. And I'll show you some best in practice visualizations to get you thinking there. Then data discovery. This is really diving in and digging deeper, answering those questions that you didn't know that you had until you're diving in and looking at the dashboards. The next step would be predictive analytics. So this is when you're actually putting together models to answer not necessarily how many, but who makes up that. So when we're talking about member retention, when we're talking about meeting attendance, so really figuring out who are those individuals, what attributes make up those individuals, and then you could go and get more of those. So that's the idea here. And then really at the top, it's AI. And so once you kind of get through all of these, you could start to look at some machine learning and how do I take advantage of, and it's a real possibility for associations now. We're seeing it where people are using AI in their analytics journey. So some expected outcomes that you should have from any sort of analytics that you do. So you want to improve efficiency. You want consistent, trusted data. This could be the most difficult one, and again comes down to having good data governance and good data practices. Revenue growth and driving strategy. So kind of one step further from that, you want to be able to reduce manual work, optimize processes, eliminate redundancy. The trusted data, a place that you could go is a data warehouse, again, a central repository, having a common language. This is something that is often kind of skipped over, but is everybody defining a member the same way? And use Excel at first. Simply start a data dictionary using Excel. Get everybody on the same page. How are we defining the key things that we're talking about at our association? And making sure everybody's on the same page internally. That could really come into play when you're reading a dashboard, making sure that everybody's reading it the same way. That goes back to having a common language. And reducing spreadsheets. So as you drive towards a central repository and having data in one trusted, consistent area, you're reducing spreadsheets that are being kept in all the different departments and kind of all over the map, and not really even knowing as an association what data that you have. Growing revenue, this is going in many different directions. So not only can you improve product sales and focus your resources on where you are making money and, you know, getting rid of those programs where you're not, people are even starting to look at, and some of you may be doing this, using data as a revenue source. So starting out maybe as a member benefit, and then producing that into a revenue stream for your association. So that's could be a whole new topic for another day, but something to keep in mind. And driving strategy. So as you get together, whether it's in your department or as an executive team or whatever that may be, really starting to use analytics to drive what you should be focused on as an association. And that trickles down to every layer. So looking at business metrics and key performance indicators, departmental strategy, and then rolling up, of course, to association strategy. And this is commonly missed. So when you're thinking about data, people are usually thinking about structured, so things that can fit in rows and columns, numbers, transactional data. But let's not forget about unstructured data. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of that today. And now at associations, we're looking at more 80% of unstructured data. So these are conversations. These are things in your community, as opposed to structured data, transactional data. Historically, what people think of when they think of data and analytics. And a breakdown further of this is behavioral and social data. So that's when we're talking about this unstructured data. That's really when you want to get a 360 view, that's such a huge piece of what we should be looking at, but is commonly missed. You know, what are our members talking about? What are they actually clicking on and doing? That's what we really want to get to. But then we can't forget the other side, the transaction side, the demographics. The combination of that really gives us the 360 view of our members. So I said I was going to talk a little bit about data governance. Just for those of you that may be wondering what data governance is, it's a core process to manage the issues and risks related to association data. And these are really the core components of it. It is data quality, data security, data definitions, ownership, and usage. And so thinking about those buckets, these are some key artifacts that you may start to put together as an association as you think about data governance. One of the key ones, and I touched on this earlier, is the data dictionary and the data catalog. This becomes very, very important along with business glossary. So business terms and definitions, the data sets and related data items, mapping all of this, having a log of all of this could be a great place to start if you're just starting on your data analytics journey. A stewardship matrix. So data is an asset, so therefore it needs to be cared for, it needs to be managed, and that's this idea of data governance. And what we're seeing is people put together cross-functional committees. It could be as small as three people. It can artificially meeting to make sure you're managing and caring for these items. So a decision log, so that way if somebody does leave the association, you understand as an association why decisions were made. And that way you don't have to go back and revisit those. The same thing with definitions. These two can be great for onboarding new employees into your association. So something as simple as the business term and definitions, making sure somebody coming in, there aren't those assumptions made and you have something together for them to look at to get up to speed. Communication plan, an issue log, and an action log are all key artifacts of data governance. So to get into a little bit more of the fun side, the visualization side, when you're really thinking about bringing data together and some of the things that we talked about, this might be what you're looking at now. So it's manual, it's error prone, it's hard to change, it's hard to interpret. I can't look at this and tell you a trend. I can't look at this quickly and tell you, I have 5 minutes. Where do I need to focus my time? This certainly isn't going to tell you that. So moving towards something like this, and again, some of the tools that you might be able to use, Microsoft Power BI, Tableau. This is something in Acumen, which is our tool. But you can start to see very quickly, okay, where this is donations. It could be anything, and we're going to show you some best-in-class visualizations on membership and a couple of other engagement, since that's one of the key topics that we're talking about. But you're able to easily drill down. So this goes back to, you want to make sure you're building something that's not necessarily a quick fix, but that you can build a foundation to answer questions in the future as well. Something that's actionable and relevant. So these are some of the things, I'm going to breeze through these pretty quickly, that you want to get out of any sort of analytics journey. So better decisions faster kind of goes back to the one slide earlier where you had all of the analytics outcome. So data is optimized for analysis, not storage. So in transactional systems, that's what you're going to see, where it's a transactional system, and so everything's stored in a manner where it's not for analysis. So you are going to get the very tabular looking reports that come out of it. So how do you take that and change it into something that's actually useful? Enhancing member customer experience. So a more complete view of the customer, bringing together all of these different data sources, improving member engagement is a key one that people are looking to do. Improve efficiency, so reduce manual effort to compile and manipulate, reduce errors and inconsistency, increase revenue, and we're going to dive into an example here. So this was NCACPA, and taking a look at member engagement. And so when they were doing this, and I'll show you the overall dashboard to give you an idea of things that you might consider, and specifically what they put into their engagement model. And the idea is start with something and iterate, and you don't need to solve for everything day one. So one of the issues they were having is live seminar margin analysis. That's where they started. So poor performance to budget, especially for live seminars. In the past, based decisions only on the number of employees. There's a lot, number of attendees. So there's a lot of decisions, I think, that are made based on the number of. We need to get more registrants. We need to get more new members. But you know what? Those new members may drop the next year. And so you spent all of that time onboarding them, and yeah, you may have seen an increase in that number, but you're not seeing an increase in the bottom line. And those are some of the things that you should be using data and analytics in order to dive in to figure out exactly where you should be spending your time. So when planning and budgeting, they looked at the expense and margin data for each event, and based on analytics alone, they reduced live seminars by 25%, a slight drop in attendance, which could be really scary to people, but the dollars are what matter to them. And so that increased over $400,000. So understanding engagement equals higher margins. So this was what they looked at NCACPA. So understanding participation, identifying underperforming products, having maybe fewer events, again, which could be scary, but whenever you have the data to support, to show where the margins and how you're going to grow the revenue, you can justify this. And so this is to give you an idea of an engagement overview. So at the top here, and this could be done in Power BI, in Tableau, and this is a visualization from Acumen, which is our tool. So at the top, you have slicers. So you have your member types up here. And the idea is you can very easily click on these and drill down to see, okay, who are my non-members who are highly engaged? And great, that gives you a list right there to target, to likely turn over into highly engaged now members. So some of the things that, actually, skip that one real quick. Sorry, I'm jumping around. Membership trends by segment. So these might be things that you look at, and these are things that NCACPA looked at. Membership numbers were holding steady, revenue was declining. Considered changing to pricing models, something that you might be considering at your association. Core CPA membership has been declining. And breaking it down in segments is very important. And so here, engagement is like a grapefruit, so best in segments. And so each piece of that is really important. So visual analysis of just the membership trends by segment. So I don't know how many of you on the call today are able to easily do that. So even something as simple as that, you're able to answer very specific questions into your membership by doing that. Within minutes, they discovered the biggest losses were coming from the business and industry members. And they were able to do this by drilling down in the visualization that I had showed you. And then major strategic initiative to serve and engage members in business and industry. So that's where their focus went. So understanding engagement equals increased revenue. I think everybody would agree to that. So sending the right message to the right audience. And so they changed all of their strategies. They had data to do this. And so it was easily supported. So professional development team rolled out an all-you-can-eat model for continuing education. Understand how different customer segments engaged with the products and services. 3 distinct email marketing campaigns. Again, when you're able to understand how people are engaging with your association, you're able to then break down your marketing to target directly to those individuals, which could be really powerful and meaningful to your members. You may hear that from your members now, I get too many emails, or they just ignore them and don't say anything to you. But when you're starting to talk specifically to them about what they care about, you're going to see increased engagement. You're going to see increased action to whatever you want. So if you want them to renew your membership, if you want them to volunteer, if you want them to register for an event, using data to drive those campaigns. And maximize revenue and product engagement. So this is how they went through their engagement scoring, which I think everybody kind of gets stuck on this. My advice is start with something and pay attention to it, pay attention to the data, and iterate from there. So kind of 4 key tips: measure what matters, assign points or weight based on value, iterate. So like I said, start with something, pay attention to it, measure it, and then iterate from there. And consider recency and frequency. So these were the scoring factors that played into their model. It was donations, CPE activity, community activity. Again, going back to the unstructured data, that's coming into play more and more. And if you haven't been thinking about that at your association, that's really what members are talking about now, real time. And so that could be really impactful when you use that data. Profile updates, event attendance, and years of membership. So that's really a combination of the structured and unstructured data that we're talking about. And so here you can see some best-in-class visualizations on how you might put all of that into play. So activities by cohort. You might start to look at, okay, this subset of people that attended our event, for example, what else did they do? What did they do right before they attended the event? What did they do right after they attended the event? Did we put out a marketing campaign that we were trying to get them to do something? And how effective was that? And so thinking about not only if you're in a certain department, how this really is cross-functional. Data is kind of an underlying factor, an asset of the entire association. And these were recommendations that came out of the NCACPA engagement. So adjust the point value system. They increased the weight for, when I'm talking about iterating, this is what they did, increase the weight for CPE hours and donations, expand point bins to credit higher engagement, and then focus on data cleansing and data quality. Another way you can do that too is looking at visualizations for data quality. That could be a fun way to actually get people to care about clean data, is gamifying it, one, and two, putting together a dashboard that your entire association can look at and strive to a goal when it comes to data quality. So let's talk a little bit about community, and this they call their higher logic customer, they use Connect. So some of you may use them as well, but any community really where people are talking and having conversations. So their Connect results showed discontinued chapters and improved communication with members, improved member involvement, reduced semi-targeted emails, and clarifying value propositions for members. And so here you see the engagement over 2017 to 2018. We broke it down into these four, which are four great ones to start. A second to kind of look at how high the numbers jumped. So that was really exciting based on decisions that they made on data. So another way to look at this, so when you're thinking about using community data, this is a great way to do it. So looking at in the middle where you see what is a word cloud, what people are actually talking about. And so you may want to break it down to what our so over here we have job title, it could be member type, whatever it may be relevant for you. Clicking on, okay, what are all managers talking about? And then you're able to see what's most relevant to them and really starting to connect the dots here. So if that's what's most relevant to them, should that be content on our website? Should that be content at our next meeting? And really start to make decisions, and this could be scary for associations, based on real time. You know, not planning maybe a year in advance and doing things because that's the way it was done last year. And your members will appreciate that, and you'll start to see engagement go up based on that. Join year, that's another important one. So if a lot of times retention for the first year is an issue for associations. So let's put together a committee specifically at your association just to focus on those first year members. And what are they talking about? So here you could go directly in here, click on their join year, which would be 2019, let's say, or 2018. And what are those folks talking about? How can we even connect them with some more senior members to talk about that same topic, put together subgroups, etc. So really leveraging this unstructured data is becoming more and more important. So another example of this is actually from ASAE, so from last year. As you can see, GDPR was one of the hot topics, of course. And then if you actually look at time, it peaked in May because that's when the regulations were coming out. But this is real time. So real time, being able to go through and see, hey, you know what are all of the marketing folks talking about? Or what are all of the CEOs talking about? And again, whether that's putting together email campaigns, content for your website, content for upcoming meetings, or hey, you know what? Let's put together a quick webinar for our members because that topic is relevant for them. Again, things that they'll really appreciate because it's real time. It's almost like the mind reading that goes on Amazon and some of the other larger companies. So this was to kind of broaden your thinking, not just thinking about engagement for individuals, but engagement for firms or companies or organizations. And of course, as a result, for the case study for NCACPA, these were some of the results that they identified. So they were able to have confidence in the decisions that they were making. They were making better decisions. They were seeing engagement. You saw on those numbers go significantly higher with their members, saving themselves time and really becoming knowledgeable and responsive in a different way than they had been in the past. So now we're going to kind of shift gears and jump over to using data analytics to drive meeting attendance. And I'm going to show you some best practice examples from leading associations in these different areas to hopefully drive some ideas that you can take away for your own association. So first it could be like, where do I start? So this is an example of a MarTech initiative, and really they were determining what to track and simply scheduling a reoccurring meeting. So again, using the resources you have, putting together a cross-functional team to really focus on these individual points here. Oh, sorry, I don't know if you guys could see that. I thought I shut down my Outlook. So e-commerce attribution, page view attribution, call to action attribution, email campaign performance, social media, telemarketing, and then a registration dashboard. So we're going to focus largely on the dashboard and automating the dashboard component, but all of these can play into really boosting your meeting attendance. So the automating reporting. So Imus segmentation. So breaking down all of the data that you have in Imus into segments. Weeks out tracking, demographic tracking, and I'm going to show you examples of those. Adding email campaigns tracking and prospect scoring, and this is a predictive model, so I'll show you an example of that. So the results based on the key points that I showed you that this association was able to achieve. So marketing advertising spend reduced by 50%. This is often missed too. People talk about, oh, we were able to grow our event by 1,000 attendees, but they also spent twice as much money. And so really using data to drive those decisions and paying attention not only to the top line, but also the operational costs. So email channel transactions up 45%, organic channel transactions up 37%, overall registration for existing segment up 20%, so that's huge. So growing your registration 20% and reducing your advertising spend 50% based on using automating reporting. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of those. So to look at an event's overview, you might want to look at your data and information this way. So everything's kind of here. You're looking at counts and dollars. So that's on the top left. So registration counts this year, registration dollars, a weeks out analysis right here with the ability to drill down to these. Registration by type, that's obviously always important. And then again, able to drill down to see what's actually behind all of these. So here's a granular registration analysis where you're able to see all of that kind of broken down one step further. A weeks out discovery, and many of you may have this, and so it's again combining this with your member types and breaking it down that way. When you're thinking about analytics, try not to stay siloed into those individual buckets, but kind of combining all of that together. Again, here you have often missed some unstructured data. If you're a scientific association or organization, start thinking about how do we use our abstracts? This is what's relevant to people. This is what people are talking about. And then you can break that down by what's this university talking about and being able to drill down that way. What is this country talking about? Are students talking about something different than postdocs? And breaking that down and seeing what's really relevant. So real-time relevancy using data that you already have. Another interesting way to look at this, so a page abandoned analysis. So on your registration site, looking at where are people leaving. And so this specific example, just tweaking a little bit of the order of people's journey through their registration, you could see their abandons were 1,762, and then in 2018, in the prior year, they were 3,200. So they went from 3,200 all the way down to 1,700. And that equals real dollars, because all those people that didn't abandon, guess what? They registered, and that equals dollars for your association. And here, a predictive model. So this gets into a little bit of heavier lifting, into statistics. I could do a whole presentation just on predictive modeling, but when you're thinking about this, This is who's likely to do something and who's not likely to do something, and what attributes make up those individuals. So in decile 1, these people are never going to do it. And you know what? Historically, we're spending our marketing dollars on those people. But by using data and maybe doing a predictive model, you're now targeting your dollars to those middle people, because in decile 6 over here to the right, you don't want to focus your dollars on those individuals either, because you know they're going to renew. You know that they're going to sign up for your meeting. This one specifically is an annual meeting predictive model. So let's not focus on those. Let's figure out what makes up those individuals, what attributes and variables went into those individuals on the right-hand side, and let's push the people in the decile 4 and decile 5 to get there. You know, you may notice that all the people in decile 6 were volunteers. So you know what, let's put together a specific marketing campaign to all the people in decile 5 to encourage them to volunteer. And then you might start to be able to push them to that behavior that you're trying for. So I know that was a lot and I ran through it quickly, but again, I hope there were questions that have come up. So I'm going to kind of have a couple of slides and resources for you all. So you may be thinking in all of this, kind of where do I start? One big underlying factor here is a data culture. And so, you know, it takes even just one person to really start to push the idea of, okay, as an association, we want to make decisions based on data, try to break that mold. And everyone should view themselves as a data owner. When I talk about data as an asset, people historically have shoved it over into IT and said, you know, that's your problem, it's not clean, I'm not using that. Everybody in the association is really a data owner and should be thinking about data as an asset and a way to benefit your members. Data quality should be built into group and individual incentives. So when I was talking about gamifying it, so figuring out a way to make data fun. Data's fun for me and everyone here at Association Analytics, but trying to create that excitement within your association and looking at quick wins. And so if you're just starting on your journey, figuring out what is a quick win, how can we get a quick dashboard out there to show people how this really works and to really drive that forward. And you don't need fancy tools. So again, start with Excel. That's something that everybody has. And as you continue to do these simple things, then you'll start to build from there and go towards maybe higher level visualization tools. And staff adopting analytics to make data-guided decisions ensures a sense of data ownership. So additional resources, we have an ultimate guide to data governance. This is free. The link's here. I can send even this whole presentation over to be sent out to you guys if you're interested. But this can actually walk you through how to build a plan for your association. And again, this could be a foundational step in order to get to the next step in your data analytics journey. We also have a data analytics maturity model, again, free. You could go on here and see kind of where you're at between learning, planning, building, applying, and leading. And then the part that I like best is it actually gives you real next steps. So for example, you may be at the point where you're ready to build a central repository for your association. You may need to step back and focus on data quality or taking an inventory of all of your data sources. So this will give you an idea of where you're at and some real next steps on how to get there. Something else that I thought of throughout the presentation, we do have a Power BI users group that is specific to associations and nonprofits. I lead that with Kristen Berry at ASAE. Anybody's welcome to join that, and there we solve problems using data to make decisions for associations. So I'm happy to share that link and have you all join that group as well to continue to learn and grow together.